Hey guys, my name is Yansel. Welcome back to my channel. And for today's video, I'm gonna walk you guys through on how I approach sound design. Off of my latest single, Phonk N Bass, which is funk music and drum and bass music combined together. And I'm gonna show you how I designed two of the most notable elements within the track. Let's get to it. Alright, so here we are in our Phonk and Bass Logic session. We set our tempo to 175 BPM, which is kind of the ideal range for drum and bass music. And we're going to take a look at our most important element, which is the Phonk cowbell. I've chosen this sound in particular through Logic's extensive sound library because I thought this one sounded the best, but you can choose whichever one you want. So the first plugin on our effects rack is this enveloper. As you can see, the tweaks I've made are very minute because in this context, I didn't really want the transients to pop off too much. But you can adjust this according to taste depending on how aggressive you want your cowbells to sound. Increasing the attack time, bringing up the gain and reducing the threshold to really emphasize your transients, and increasing the output to your desire on how loud you want it. And if you're confused as to where to start, you can choose some of these presets right here. And under the enveloper, I've added some EQ to really cut out the lows and the low mids, increase the highs. And then a Bitcrusher with the drive up to 5 dB, the resolution all the way up, downsampling to 25, and the mix at 25% to give it some grit. And right underneath the first Bitcrusher, I have a second Bitcrusher with the drive up 14%, resolution all the way up, downsampling all the way down, and the mix at 100. This is really to help push the cowbell to the forefront. And finally, I have this compressor with the sidechain set to the kick drum. So that way, every time the kick drum plays, the sidechain ducks the volume of the cowbell to let the kick shine through. And on the same stem, the first send I have here has a little bit of reverb and some EQ under the reverb to clean it out. And a second send with some echo or delay with the note timing set to 1/8 dotted notes, the feedback at 60%, and the wet knob all the way up. This is so we can control the echo or the delay much better with the send amount instead of the dry and wet knob. Right under the echo, I have some shaper box with this filter sweep and this time manipulation preset. This is just to add some character to the delay overall, but you can choose whatever preset you want. And as always, we have a little bit of EQ to cut out the lows, increase the highs, and clean it up a bit. One thing I want to point out to you guys, and this could be a very helpful tip to you as it was for me in spicing up my melodies and my themes, is taking your main melody and manipulating it as a background melody to really help bring out the best in the main theme. This is what the background melody sounds like. And all I've done for this background melody is add one of these many presets off of Shaperbox that I thought really complemented the main theme or the main melody. And the processing for this background melody is very simple. I just added some EQ cutting out the lows. And I used the same reverb bus for the main cowbells to add to the background melody. So now I'll do a before and after of the two melodies. Alright, so now let's move on to the other notable element in our track, which is this drench morph bass. This is quite an aggressive and rhythmic bass that plays throughout the important parts of the track, like the drop and the climaxes. And I used Vital, which is kind of my go-to synth plugin at the moment, to design this bass. Also keep in mind, guys, if you find my method of production a little disorderly, it's because at the time I produced this, I was in between the beginner intermediate level of sound design. So I just randomly put stuff in, turned knobs up, and just messed with it until I found a sound that I liked. So bear with me as I talk you guys through how I made this bass. So first things first, we have our 3 oscillators open, and these are the sounds I've chosen. This double Bowie, cardboard cube, and flung square in oscillator 1, 2, and 3 respectively. And we'll go into our phase tab right here, put whatever value you want in this, and we're gonna leave our phase randomization at 0 because we want the sound to remain consistent if you're going to record this in MIDI. So let's move on to our oscillator settings and what we've got going on here. Starting with oscillator 2, we have this wavetable called cardboard cube, which you can search in your wavetable menu. So by by default, this is kind of a sine wave, which acts as a sub-layer, a foundation layer for our main bass. And over at our pitch tab, we have the pitch set to -36. You can move this pitch up or down in 1 semitone increments by holding your left mouse click, or you can move these in 12 semitone increments by holding shift and holding your left mouse click and moving it up or down. Next up, we have our volume level, which is set to 0.550, and we have LFO3, which is this shark fin shape being routed to our volume knob. So let me explain briefly what this LFO is doing. It'll automate the movement according to what you have in your LFO and at what speed and what mode you have set it to. That way you have some rhythmic variation in whatever sounds you create. And briefly before we move forward, let me show you the settings for LFO3. We have it on trigger mode and our frequency at quarter notes. So for oscillator 2, we have LFO3 routed to our volume knob right here and to our wavetable frame slider, but only ever so slightly. Then we have routed oscillator 2 to our effects, which I will show you later. And over on this tab here, we have selected the bend feature and turned this knob down ever so slightly. So here is what oscillator 2 sounds like at the moment. Next up, we have oscillator 3 with this flung square wavetable. Again, our pitch is at -36. Our volume level is all the way down. And this time we have LFO1, which is this bent by 3's LFO being routed to the volume knob. Next, we have our pan knob turned to -47%, and we have LFO3, which is this shark fin shape again being routed to the pan knob so that it moves from side to side. And here we have our frame slider all the way up, and this is what oscillator 3 sounds like. And now let's talk about oscillator 1. We have this double Bowie wavetable selected. On our pitch tab here, we have the pitch set to -12, our volume level set to 0.15, and we have LFO1 being routed to the volume knob. Over on our pan knob, we have it set to the -40 region, and we have LFO3 routed to the pan knob with the automation level turned all the way up. Next, we have our wavetable slider at the 80 position, and we have LFO1 being routed to the slider with the automation level turned all the way up as well. Here on our unison tab, we have our unison voices set to 5 voices and the unison detune level set to 10%. And here we have our wavetable morph knob set to FM oscillator 3. I'll show you guys what that does in a bit. So let me show you what oscillator 1 sounds like by itself. So it sounds a little unusual, but let's turn on oscillator 3 and see what happens. Now it sounds very interesting. That's because we have set this morph level to oscillator 3, which means oscillator 3 is being morphed with the double Bowie wavetable at oscillator 1. And we can select the wave morph amount by this knob right here. In addition to that, we've routed oscillator 1 to filter 1, which is down here. So let me talk you guys through the settings for our filter. We have this blend slider all the way to the left. We have this set to analog, 12 dB. So we're just going to select oscillator 1 so that it affects only oscillator 1. And right here we have our cutoff slider. We're going to pull that all the way to the right. And we have LFO1 being routed to the cutoff slider. And we're going to turn the automation level to the left to the -40 region so that the cutoff slider moves backwards instead of forwards. Then we have our resonance slider right here set all the way down, and LFO2, which is just a regular triangle shape, being routed to the resonance slider with the automation turned up halfway. And then we have our drive knob at 5 dB and our mix turned all the way up. So now in order to enhance this bass, let's move on to the effects. The first effect on our list is distortion. We've selected the type to soft clip. Our drive is at -12 dB, our mix at 0.6, and our drive knob is being automated by LFO1. Next we have this compressor. You have 4 modes that you can choose from, but by far my favorite for this is this multiband mode. As you can see, it kind of resembles the OTT plugin. We're going to turn up our mix knob, our attack knob at 75%, and our release knob at 25. This way we can get the most out of this multiband compressor. And finally we have our EQ. We have our low shelf increasing some low end frequencies, our high shelf increasing some highs, and we have this band pass filter with the resonance turned a tad bit high. We have our cutoff at this level, and we're automating this cutoff with LFO2, this triangle shape, so that this cutoff moves back and forth. So here's what this bass sounds like in its entirety. And finally, on our channel rack for this drench morph bass, I've added a little bit of EQ, bringing out some low end and increasing some high end. And I've added this compressor with the side chain set to the kick so that the volume of the kick ducks down every time the kick plays. So now I'm going to play our 2 notable elements together. And here are all the elements together in the first drop. And there you have it. I hope you found this video interesting or helpful. Leave a like and comment below what your thoughts are and if you have any suggestions for future videos. As always, I thank you guys for watching till the very end and for your continued support. And I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.